Hello, this is Techman88, and I have here an actual 9 GameTech tree farm. I think these have been done before, but I hope this video can maybe explain a little bit better how you actually achieve this, because it gets into some pretty technical stuff in terms of block event delay, which I had to get right or it just would not work at the speeds that it should. So it can get about 40k spruce or birch per hour, and also spruce. So that's about what ilmango had for his, what he called a completely maxed out birch tree farm. So that's kind of like another confirmation that this is actually as fast as it should be. So I can change the tick rate to like 5 or so. So you can see the piston actions, and you can also kind of hear that it's working at a consistent pace. So every 9 game ticks, you can hear it harvest a tree, or every 3 game ticks you can hear the pistons moving. So if it isn't obvious, this tree farm is not complete. This is kind of to record my own thoughts on the matter. It's done with player bone mealing. I didn't bother trying to fit 3 dispensers in there, and I have ilmango bone mealing that every 2 ticks. And back here, this is kind of the magic to how it happens, and I guess I will explain that later, how you get the block event delay that you need this to actually be able to reactivate the system after the 9th game tick. So the entire goal of these 9 game tick tree farms is this, what you see right here, where you do an instant 0 tick pulse on these back pistons, and immediately you push the front pistons. So it looks like actually the back piston is pulling the front piston back immediately after the tree grows. But in fact, it's a very quick pulse, a 0 tick pulse. And that 0 tick pulse also has to be in the right part of the tick for this to all work out. And I've watched many tree farms that are very fast, and I think the people that actually make the tree farms, they obviously understand how they work, but nobody really bothers to even explain how they do it, I think because they make this into a competition. But for me, this is not really about competition. In fact, I wouldn't even recommend building this unless you really want to. This is more about that I can prove to myself that I can do some of these things, like the instant 0 tick repeater right here, and block event delay, tweaking, all that kind of stuff. So I guess it would make sense to explain this from the beginning of the machine. Starting with the tree detection back here, the instant tree detection. So this is probably a basic arrangement. I've got 2 rails, and they're offset by 1 tick. So every single game tick, this piston gets an update, and it will be quasi-connectivity powered by this redstone dust right here through a tree right here, which you can't actually even see because it gets instantly moved. Okay, so the first thing it does is obviously push this piston here, and I'll zoom out a little bit so you can look at it. And that's just this like big kind of sloppy looking slime thing right here, which the first thing it does is down here. So the signal right here, it gets uncut, and that is a 3 game tick pulse. That is needed to actually make this work in the way that I did. So it has to uncut a signal to instantly turn on this redstone line right here. And then I need to get it back after 9 game ticks. So I can look back here. So I'm using a series of pistons back here. So this redstone block gets pushed forward. Maybe I'll go so I can point. So yeah, this redstone block gets pushed forward. Then that pushes forward this redstone block, and that powers this line, which pushes this sloppy green thing back. Yes, and this piston up here, that's like, you have to do this a lot if you're making machines like this, is sometimes you need an extra update later in a tick or something like that. So that's kind of what that achieves. Okay, so yes, the entire goal of this is, it's 2 things. One is the instant 3 game tick pulse, which of course is done by uncutting the signal and then pushing this redstone block away. And then it pushes this redstone block back, which will re-enable this the ability to instant instantly power this line. So back here is where it gets complicated, if that wasn't complicated enough. So this is where it's generating the instant zero tick pulse, which you can't actually see. I can add a piston, I guess, so you can visualize it. Yeah, you can barely even see it. But yeah, the instant zero tick pulse right as the tree grows, and then a 3 game tick pulse after that, so it can retract the piston, pull the front piston back. So the way this is achieved is block event delay, which is like some of the most complicated Minecraft stuff, I would say, where you can't really visualize it really, and this is where these complicated piston arrangements come here. Okay, so maybe I'll try and explain it here. So this right here, this generates the long pulse in order to pull the front pistons back. So that happens at block event delay 0 or whatever, like instantly. So the next thing that it does, this piston right here is going to activate, and that's going to update the piston next to it. So this piston right here, which is part of this instant zero tick generator, which I got from Elmango. Oh, and by the way, just to mention it, this honey block is actually useful in this matter because, well, it could be useful. Maybe not here, but because it doesn't cut signals, it can be make something a little more compact. So anyway, back to this zero tick repeater, instant zero tick repeater. So yes, this is the first piston that activates, which updates this piston, which is quasi-connectivity powered by this block. And all these are quasi-connectivity powered, by the way. That's how you do this. So when that triggers with the honey block in front, that's going to update this piston, which is going to update this piston. So the reason for all this block event delay is so that these activate later in the tick. So yeah, actually this piston here for the long pulse, that's updating first in the tick. It's starting to move first in the tick, and that means it's going to get back first in the tick. That's the important part that I had to figure out for this, is this actually has to get back first so the signal can actually turn off before it does the zero tick pulse in the same game tick. So that's the very challenging thing to get right, but this circuit actually does this appropriately. And yes, the results show that it works. So I know some of that, or most of that, might have not made any sense at all to a lot of people. So later in the video, I'm going to try and explain it better. Exactly how and why there's this block event delay concept. So the rest of the farm isn't anything too special. I just tried to keep it nice and simple. I guess I'm doing something a little bit different here with the slime and honey pushers. And this is actually pretty fast. You can look at my MSPT. Actually. Yeah, so this takes up about 2 MSPT, which I think is pretty good. It avoids a lot of redstone, obviously, because instead of redstone everywhere, you're using just a couple pistons and some slime and honey. So I think that's quite a good thing. Yeah, this honey block is really changing tree farming in such a way. So back here, these are 3 game tick generators. So they're directly powered from the 3 game tick pulse that powers the whole farm, but that doesn't have enough signal strength. And I didn't want to do another instant repeater. So yeah, that just directly powers the pistons from this line, and I have another one on the other side. Okay, now back to the stuff about block event delay. So back to the circuit, which is really the most important circuit of the entire thing, to get the instant zero tick and then the 3 game tick on this redstone line, the back set of pistons. So this is a solution that I arrived at that actually works, gets stuff into the right part of the tick. And now I'm going to show you what I wish I could have done because it was so much simpler. I have that back here. So this is basically the same circuit, but I have an additional piece of redstone dust over here, this one here. So that produces the appropriate 3-game tick pulse. So this actually looks like it will work fine, like it does the instant 0 tick, and then the long tick afterwards for the retraction. But the problem with this one is that the block event delay is wrong. So this redstone block is what's going to be powering the long pulse, but that has a long block event delay. So yeah, if you don't know how this one works, this is the first piston activated right here. That triggers this piston, which triggers this piston. That's the update chain to get the block event delay. And that eventually powers this redstone block here. So when you do it like that, that means that the redstone block, because it was pushed last, and that also means it's going to be retracted last. And that means that you can't actually use it for the next block event delay. It'll be too late in the tick, because the first part of the tick is where the 0 tick pulse happens from this piston extending before this piston extending. So basically you need this redstone block to depower the dust. It's powered through this dust here, up this way. You need that to happen before the 0 tick happens. So essentially I took this circuit and just kind of doubled up this redstone block function here. And that's how I arrived at my kind of system that I think looks a lot worse, but it does work. And that's what's important. And I honestly do think this is a lot cleaner than like some of the old farms when people were doing the insane competitions trying to make the most fast tree farms ever. Yeah, the honey block, and I don't think they even had slime blocks back then. This sort of stuff made it quite a lot easier to do this, a little bit more clean. Alright, now I'm going to attempt to explain block event delay, and I'll try and start as simple as possible. So this is a instant repeater, but it has a long retraction. So when I retract this piston, it takes a while for this piston to retract, which would represent part of the tree farm. And I do have this slowed down at tick rate 5, so about 4th normal speed. So if I take a naive approach and try and do this block event delay some way, like if I put a redstone block here on this piston, powered directly from the same line as the other one, like maybe if I power it from over here I'll get a 0 tick, but that is not the case. This is where it might catch up some people because you can't actually generate block event delay like this. So the way I can fix this is I need to quasi-connectivity power this piston here. So one way to do it, which is not really the cleanest way, is I can like put a redstone dot up there to quasi-connectivity power this. Actually, I don't need that one. Then what I do is I need to somehow update this piston. So I could have attached a block there maybe, but really the way most people do it is you would put a piston there which can update that piston. So now when I trigger this, it should make a 0 tick. Yeah, there we go. So you'd be able to see this block gets instantly moved forward or instantly starts retracting. So that's the most basic example of a block event delay, where this piston updates this piston, which is quasi-connectivity powered. So that means there's like this, the technical name is a priority queue, the way they probably do this, where all of the first pistons get updated, then it propagates outward to the next piston, then that propagates outward to the next piston. So that means this piston is going to be pushing forward later in the tick, like 3, as opposed to 1 for the first one. Like that's 1, this one is 2, and this one is 3. So this example right here is probably the best way to actually get into block event delay is with 0 tick generators, because it's actually quite useful, and you will learn very quickly because these things are extremely powerful when you're working in pretty much any piston-based farm, but especially a tree farm. Like maybe a door might, piston door might, you might benefit from these. So anyway, the entire reason I dug into the whole block event delay stuff was just because I was not getting as quick of rates as I wanted. So this is actually as fast as Ilmango's completely maxed out birch farm for birch. And I wasn't getting those rates unless I did a whole lot of different stuff. Like I had to make sure I reset the tree detector on the ninth game tick. And I also had to get the block event delay right. And again, that's what this setup here. This is the first part of the tick where this happens, and also the first part of the tick where it retracts. And that retraction is the important part that allows this to instantly do the zero tick, but later in the tick. So I had to delay the zero tick to a later part of the tick to actually make this work. So that covers most of the farm, and one thing you may notice here is that there's no repeaters whatsoever. And yeah, that's for good reason. I'm using all piston timings because everything has to be matched up to the piston for this to work. I had some repeaters in it at one point, like this down here, but I had to replace it with a redstone block moving back and forth just because the repeaters were not quite fast enough. 2 game ticks was too long. This is what happens when you are doing tree farming to this level, is 2 ticks is way too long. Can't use any repeaters, comparators, or anything like that. It all has to be instantly uncutting signals, and all that sorts of nonsense. And again, I probably would not recommend building this. I'm gonna try and like have a world download with like a completed farm with all the bone meal dispensing, but really, if you know a bunch about tree farming, you know that that stuff is kind of secondary to the actual mechanisms, like what I have back here. Like if you can't get these zero tick stuff right, then your tree farm just isn't going to be the performance that you're going after. So anyway, back to normal speed, how this actually would look like in real life. It's kind of insane. Just constantly going. And of course this uses player bone meal, which I guess is not traditionally how when people claim their tree farm is really fast. But it's not like there's some international like rules committee that determines the rules for tree farms. I figured that whatever works. Like, the offhand wasn't even available back when people were competing in tree farms. But whatever I say, use any tools that you need to. And I don't think even fast clicking should be against the rules. It just makes part of this tree farming business just a lot easier, a lot less annoying. So anyway, thank you for watching and goodbye.